Hello, my amazing algebra half students. This is Mrs. A, and I love math. And today we're doing lesson 22, which is a fun one because we're going to do multiple fractional factors, and we're going to make a very difficult problem like this into a very simple problem by using our products of primes. So remember, when we're doing prime numbers, we can cancel. So we know what 56 is made of, and we know what 27 is made up of, and 14 and 21 and 15 and 22. So let's give this a shot. So I know that 56 is divisible by 2, and I know there's an 8 and a 7. And I know that 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. So I'm going to take a shortcut. So since I know that this is 7 times 8, then I'm going to say the 8 is 2 times 2 times 2 times, and then the 7. So that's 56. And I didn't have to do much work to get there. I know that 27 is 3 times 9, but 9 is 3 times 3. So 27 is 3 times 3 times 3. I know that my 14 is 7 times 2. And I know that my 21 is 7 times 3. I know that my 15 is 3 times 5. And I know that my 22 is 2 times 11. Now, I can start to cancel like factors from the top and the bottom. Well, this one's very easy because it's right on top of the other. So now I have a 2, which I look all the way for 2's, and there's only one 2 there. I have a 7 on the top and no more 7's on the bottom. And I have a 3 on the top, which I can cancel with that 3 right there. And there are no 5's on the bottom. So just by looking across the numerator and saying, do I have anything else that I can cancel? I'm all done. So now all I have to do is multiply all of this back together. So I'm going to take another shortcut. 2 times 5 is 10. So 4 times 7 is 28, and then I multiply by 10, which just means I add a 0 on the end. So 28 with a 0 on the end is 280. And then I look at the denominator, and I've got 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27, and then I've got an 11, and everything has been canceled out. Now remember, when we do 27 times 11, it's just 27 twice, right? 27, scoot it over, 27, 297. So we have 280 over 297, and that should be our answer. And it is the same answer that your book comes up with. Isn't that an easy and fun way to do really big numbers? Now, on this one, you didn't have to factor all the way to primes if you didn't want to, but you do have to at least look at everything to make sure that this goes down to the very smallest, okay? So, in other words, here, I did use that 2, but I could have used that 2. I could have just left that an 8 and not have to worry about it. But the biggest thing is to be able to look at all your factors in a layout like this to see if anything is going to cancel. So that is our first example. Okay, so we have a multiplication and then a division. I don't want to get confused, so I'm going to turn this division around right away into a multiplication. So I'm going to move the 15 upstairs and the 4 downstairs. So it's going to be 15, 4, this is going to go away, and now this is a multiplication symbol. If you want to erase that, you can, but you need to flip it over. Okay, so now notice how I did this a little bit differently. I wrote my problem right in the middle of my board. And since it's right in the middle of the board, I can factor right above it. So 26 is 2 times 13, isn't it? So let's cross out the 26 and leave the 2 times 13. 21 is 3 times 7. So let's cross out the 21 and leave the 3 times 7. 15, which is now in the numerator, is 3 times 5. So I'm going to cross out the 15 and leave the factors above it. Down in the denominator, I know that 30 is 3 times 10, but I know that 10 is 2 times 5. So this is going to be 2 times 3 times 5, and I cross out the 30. 39 is 3 times 13, and I cross out the 39, and 4 is 2 times 2. You see how easy that is to do when you've left room to do it? So if you write your problem right across the middle of your problem spot, then you can factor above and below and not have to copy your problem again, which I don't like to do. Okay, so now we're going to start to cancel our like terms. We can cancel from the numerator and the denominator, and it doesn't have to be right above. It can be any numerator with any denominator, because these are now all multiplied together, and that bothers me that that dot is so much bigger than that one, so I'm going to fix it. All right, so now we've got a 13 on the top and a 13 on the bottom. We have a 2 on the top and a 2 on the bottom. We have a 3 on the top and a 3 on the bottom. We have a 7 on the top, but no 7 on the bottom. We have a 3 on the top and another 3 on the bottom. And we have a 5 on the top and a 5 on the bottom. Wow, that one really cleaned up, didn't it? So now what do we have all the way across the numerator is only the 7. So we have a 7 in the numerator, and then we look all the way across the denominator, and we've got a 2 times a 2, which is 4. Okay, so 7/4 is your final answer. Here is your first practice problem. So copy it down and then pause your video. If I were doing this practice problem, I would take a little shortcut. I would not even try to factor the 14 and the 14, because I can already see right away that they cancel. I would not bother factoring the 30 and the 15, because I know 30 is exactly 2 times the 15. So I can cancel without factoring. And so in that case, factoring would be a waste of my time, wouldn't it? So if you can see the factors, then don't worry about the product of primes. Just cancel what you can cancel. Now the 12 and the 2, I can see right away that's going to be a 6 up here and a 1 down there. Notice that I've canceled everything out but this right here. So notice that 105 is divisible by 3. Can you see it? Remember our multiplication rules? If I can add all the digits together, when I add all the digits, I get a 6. And 6 is divisible by 3, so that means 105 is also divisible by 3. So I'm going to split this into 3 times. Now, I know that a 5 goes in there, so let's do 105 divided by 3, and that's going to give me a 3 times 3 is 9, and I'm going to get a 15 left over. 3 into 15 is 5. So 3 times 35 is going to be my factor. Now 35 is not a product of primes, but I know I'm not going to need to go any further, because when I divide the 6 by a 3, so the 6 we can write as a 3 times a 2 and get rid of the 6. Now I can see that I can cancel the 3 and the 3, but the 2 is not going to cancel with the 35. And the 2 and the 35 is all I have left. Everything else has been canceled out, hasn't it? So I'm going to say 2 divided by 35 is my final answer. A little bit messy board, but hopefully you can see because you've been following me. And you were supposed to do this one before I did it anyway, because it was one of your practice problems. So I hope you got 2 over 35. Okay, so we have 3 fractions again, and they're all multiplied together. So we can factor each one into a product of primes like we're supposed to, or we can take a couple of shortcuts. I know that 6 goes into 18 3 times, because 6 times 3 is 18. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel and make that a 3. I also know that 3 cancels 3, so that's going to get rid of that 3. So now I have a 4 and a 15 and a 16 on the denominator. But I know that a 4 goes into a 16. So I'm going to cancel with a 4. And I have nothing left up here. So this is now a 1 in the numerator. And my denominator is 4 times 15, which is 60. I never had to factor into products of primes because just by canceling what I knew, I was able to get there much faster. Okay, now if I needed to, I would factor into the product of primes. But I knew that 6 goes into 18 3 times, so that became a 1 and a 3. And I knew the 3 and the 3 would cancel, and then I knew the 4 and the 16 would cancel with a 4, and 4 times 15 is 60. These are just plain fun. Copy down your practice C and then pause your video. Okay, well, hopefully you did that. So now notice a multiplication and then a division. So I'm going to have to flip this one over and turn it into multiplication. So I'm going to put the 15 on top, the 6 on the bottom. I'm going to get rid of that either by erasing or crossing out, and then I'm going to turn this division into multiplication, and I'm going to make that one a little bigger to make me happy. All right, so now we've got 15 on the top and a 30 on the bottom. Now 15s and 30s just go to me because I know that they always cancel. 15 times 2 is 30. So I'm going to cancel my 15 and my 30 with a 2. And I'm not going to bother to factor them because I know that as a multiplication fact. Okay, so now I also see something. I see that 21 is 7 times 3 and 14 is 7 times 2. But since we're talking about product of primes, let's go ahead and write it down. 7 times 3, 7 times 2. So we're going to cross that out, okay? So now we're going to cancel the 7 and the 7 because we can, okay? So now what do you see? Do you see a 2 and a 2 that can go away? All right, so now let's take the big picture. I still have a 6 on the bottom over here, but I have a 6 on the top over here. So 6 and 6 cancel. When everything cancels, a 1 is left there, right? So if we look at across the top, we have canceled all the numerators. So 1 will be the numerator. And then what if I not canceled in the denominator? I got rid of all of that, so all I have is a 3. So 1/3 should be our answer. Hopefully you did it by yourself and got 1/3 as well. Last problem on set 22. So now I want you to copy this one down. It is your last practice, so pause your video. Hopefully you did that. Now we notice we have a division here on the end. Multiplication, division. We need to turn the division into multiplication. So we're going to flip the fraction and make that a 45 over 12. And we can cross that out, or we could erase it, turn this into multiplication. Okay? So now we have everything multiplication, so we can cancel as we go. Now, what do you see that's going to make this an easy problem? Okay? Can you see that 14 and 28 have a common factor of 14? 14 plus 14 is 28. So we can cancel this with a 1 and a 2. Okay, if we factored, we would get 2 times 7 and 4 times 7. And then we would cancel the 2 and the 4 and get 1 and 2. So I'm just seeing the factors and I'm doing it faster. Okay, now let's look at this. We've got so that we're done with that one, but let's go over here. Let's go ahead and factor by primes just to make sure you know how to do that. And then this one's going to be 5 times 7, isn't it? And then 45. Okay, 45 is going to be 15 times 3, so it's going to be 3 times 3 times 5, which is 9 times 5, which we know is 45. And then we'll cross that one out, that one out, that one out, because we factored them. And then 12 is 2 times 2 times 3. Okay, so we've gotten everything factored and we canceled out our original numbers. So now let's go just across the top is a good way to do it. So we've got a 2, and we find a 2 downstairs. So we cancel the 2 with the 2. We've got a 5, and we've got a 5 downstairs. So we cancel the 5 and the 5. We've got a 1. We're not going to worry about him. We've got a 3, and we do have a 3 right down there. So we cancel that 3, but we can see we don't have another 3 downstairs, so we have to leave that 3 there. And we do not have another 5 downstairs. So we have canceled all that we can cancel. So let's see what we have left. Nothing here but a 1, and we have a 15 on the numerator. 3 times 5 is 15. And then on the denominator, we have a 7. And then down here, we have a 2 times 2, which is a 4. And 7 times 4 is 28. And 15 and 28 have no factors in common. So we are finished. And we're finished with the lesson. And this is Mrs. A, and may God bless your day.